Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Here we go. It's Friday night on Spaced Out Radio, and we got a good one for you. Preston Dennett, author extraordinaire of UFOs and Alien Contact, is here for a double shot on Spaced Out Radio. He's with me tonight, and then with Marquise and Nicole tomorrow night. Yep, we're doing it. We're giving Preston the airtime he deserves. One of the best dudes in the field right now and forever. And we love them around here. All right, let us say hello to all of you as we got Race Fan in the gold medal position. New listener, well, long-time listener, first-time poster, Y2K2MI taking home a silver. Laura Lobbs with a nice bronze medal. We got Robert Lamoth, Roy Boy, Brown Dwarf, Ruth Kleber, Forrest Louie, Les Paul Holland, and Kevin. And there's Pam Harris kicking off this super chat tonight. Thank you so much, Pam. We love you. And we really appreciate the love you have for Spaced Out Radio. Thank you very, very much. W. Decker, what's happening? W. Decker is going to be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Lisa C., D. Cohen, Deer Slayer, and Nancy Thames. How are you? Kurt M. And this no-name brand right here that's first time here. He says, "Hello, world. I have arrived, and don't say you missed me. I know you're lying." Don't know who that is, but welcome to SOR Chat. Dolly Safran is here. Dolly will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio for Dolly. To the right of the studio. Our favorite Marine, Black Dragon, is back. Thank you for joining us. And who else do we have here? We have, scrolling on down. There's number 21 in your program, starting at left wing from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson, Silent Listen, how are you? And Dave Walters, I hope you're doing well. Chase just got, they're on an evac alert. They're about to go down too. So, man, only the Coca-Cola to get out of here, man. Holy cow. Jeez, we're watching the fire situation. Right now, there's 379 fires burning in BC at this moment. Okay, moving on. Doug Shelby is here. The Doug Shelby has arrived, which means we can officially start this show. Just another guy named Harry. How are you? And who else do we have here? W. David Page, thank you for joining us. And W. Decker, thank you so much for that great super chat for Preston, for Dolly, for Dave. We love you, W. Decker. Thank you for your continued support. D. Cypher, how are you? Pixie Lara, what's going on? Dutch Hank, Vanessa the Lover, how are you? Grant, how's the mustache coming? Give us an update if you don't mind. Luscious Jules, Susan Alloway, Lee the Bee, thank you for joining us. Hello there, T-Bone and Dark Protocol. Good to see you. Anna, nice to have you back. Hi, Max Ritchie. And Tim Mothman and his goatee, two separate entities. How you doing? All right, Forrest Louie, thank you for that wonderful super chat. We love your nightly support here, my man. Thank you for the love. Really appreciate it. Hey there, Gee. What's going on? UFO Golden, what's happening? 405er. And, the Debster kicking in a super chat as well. Thank you, Deb, for your love, and welcome to tonight's show. Glenn John McEnroe, the Pride of Wimbledon. David Lopez, welcome to SOR Chat. Vash the Impaler, Ms. Twinkle, good to see you. And Mr. Cowley, welcome back to the show. Oh, Mr. Cowley loves his spaced out radio. All right, let's get the radio side going so we can get Bill WD40 into the chat room to lube us on up. There he is. Bobo, if you're going to be an idiot, you're going to be gone. Gildo, we don't play this game. So smarten up or get the hell out. Bad Cop No Donut, Paramarv, Richard Elmore, Jeremy Jones, Amy, Vegas. Oh, we love you, my dear. Hope you're having a great time. All right, Jeff Steve Garvey, he'll hit a home run for you. JSCO, James Friday the 13th, Political Foolishness. Good to see you all. And Toothbrush, nice to have you here. And Derek, thank you for the super chat. Much appreciate the love, my man. And Raymond L., how you doing? All right, we're running out of time. Jennifer Rocho, welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Michael Fontaine, David H., and Evan Walters, how you doing? All right, that's it for the roll call. Horns up. Let's rock. From the mountains of central British Columbia to you listening around the world, this, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. You'll do me the favor, hit that subscribe button. You can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. All right, we got a power show of woo tonight, all about humanoids and aliens with author, researcher, and longtime amazing bestseller, Preston Dennett is back with us. Then in hour number 3, Steve Stockton brings us another creepy story, this time on Sasquatch. Then the UFO report has little Timmy Senor hopping on in. All right, let's get right to it. Preston Dennett is back with another amazing book, Humanoids and High Strangeness, presenting 20 new original and unpublished accounts of people who have had face-to-face encounters with humanoids and aliens. The diversity of entities is mind-boggling, from grays to humanoids to mantids, reptilians, angels, natural spirits, ghosts, poltergeists, demons, Bigfoot, everything that you can name. Yeah, you can go on to Amazon and pick it up there, or go to Preston Dennett's website, which is prestondennett.weebly.com. Preston, it is always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio, my good friend. Thank you so much. I'm going to get you to unmute your mic so that way we can get things going here. And there you are. Always a pleasure to have you here. How you been?
Doing well. Yeah, doing pretty good. Hope you are too, in spite of all the fires. That's pretty scary. But,
yeah, I have a daytime job, and my best friend at work today, he lives 3 hours out of town, and he comes up when the boss is away, and we kind of hang out and do our thing. And he looked at me and he's like, I gotta go. I'm like, you gotta go. Just the way it is, my sister's now evacuated. There's 379 fires in British Columbia as we speak. I mean,
Unreal.
That's a lot. That's a lot.
Yeah. Well, I lived in a fire-prone area as a kid, so we had to evacuate a couple of times. Yeah, it's pretty intense.
It's not a fun feeling. It really is. So, I mean, you can sit there and say pray for rain or whatever, but I mean, the real heroes are on the ground and in the air right now battling their way through this. So hopefully, they get everybody out as quickly as possible out of those danger zones. But we could talk about that another night. And I apologize if I'm sounding a little hoarse. The other day, it was like 100 degrees here at SOR headquarters. And my better half decided to give me a cold. How do you get a cold in 100-degree weather? It's impossible. Apparently not. But we're going to get into some UFOs with you tonight, because, there's a lot going on in the world, Preston. And, the one thing I love about you is no matter what you do, you let your research do the talking. You let the stories that you have encountered do the talking. And why did you decide to, when you started writing books, to allow the stories to do the talking rather than your own words?
Because I was disappointed with some of the books I was reading, honestly. And I felt like some of them were not telling the whole truth. I actually found out that was true, and I won't name the authors, but some of the people who were in these other books approached me and said, hey, my story was not accurately represented. I thought, wow, really? And it kind of didn't surprise me, because some of the things that people do describe are very strange. The paranormal and high strangeness is a part of all of this. And that's getting edited out of a lot of people's stories. And I just think it's more interesting to hear from the person themselves, honestly, than me. So, I'm kind of trying to write the kinds of books that I like to read. So I guess that would be my main motivation.
You have dug up so many of the most incredible stories over the years outside of this latest book. How do you not have these stories haunt you at night?
Who says they're not? Yeah,
Are they?
a little bit. I enjoy what I do, don't get me wrong, but there are times where I just want to live a little bit of a normal life, step away from it. And I try, but I come right back to it because I do love it. It's so interesting. But yeah, I lie awake at night after having interviewed someone perhaps recently and kind of just go over and over what they told me. And it can be very emotional at times. I cry right along with the witnesses or laugh in some cases. I'm kind of an emotional person anyway. So yeah, it affects me definitely. I spent most of my life doing this. I realized that about 5 years ago. I'm like, I've devoted pretty much most of my life to studying UFOs. And now, I'm doing it full time because I'm not working right now. So this is something I do in and out, day in and out.
For you, looking back at all of those stories that you have heard and witnessed over the years, the emotions of people, like you just made a comment, are there any of those stories that still stick with you, whether they're relatively new or from years gone by, that you could share?
Oh yeah, there's several that definitely stick out. One guy I interviewed, I call him Raymond because he doesn't want his real name used. But I was interviewing him, and he was stationed at Camp Pendleton, which, if you know Camp Pendleton, this is in Southern California, does have a pretty interesting history of UFO encounters. Not the only person I've interviewed who had encounters associated with that base. And he described how he joined the Marines at age 17 with a parental waiver and got pulled right into what I think is probably my labs or military kind of mind control experimentation. But he described seeing a reptilian, and I was interviewing him on the phone. And I asked him, what does it look like? And he started weeping. He started crying. And mind you, this is a full-grown man in the military who had been in Vietnam and seen some tough situations. And I calmed him down. I'm like, listen, if you don't want to describe it, that's perfectly fine. I don't mean to upset you. He says, no, it's all right. It's just every time I think of it, it shakes me up. So he couldn't really give me a great description. He says, I'll do my best, but all I can tell you is it had reptilian in eyes and scaly skin. And it was, I think he said 7 feet high, twice as wide as a normal man. and quite, not, I don't want to say hostile, but definitely threatening. Yeah, that comes back to me every now and then because I did not want to upset him. I felt like to a certain extent that was my fault. But yeah, his case really kind of always comes back to me because one time I was interviewing him. Because when you interview someone, it's, you get to know them really well. And I talked to him for a couple of hours, hung up the phone. He called me the next day. He says, "You're not going to believe it. But after I hung up the phone, my 4-year-old son came into the room and said, 'Daddy, a star landed in the street while you were on the phone.'" And he's like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Star landed in the street, right in the front yard. It was a UFO. It had come down while we were doing the interview, and his kid saw it." So, I mean, things like that continue to happen. One time I got a call from a guy in England who really wanted to talk to me, and he was kind of weepy too, really upset. I never did a formal interview. A lot of the people I talk to, they just want someone to talk to. They have questions. They're looking for confirmation or corroboration or information. And he asked me, he said he had an encounter, and he asked me, "Do ETs talk about nuclear weapons and the dangers of it and future disasters and this sort of thing?" I of course, told him yes. That's very common. That's one of their most common messages. So we talked about that for a good hour, and we're pretty much saying our goodbyes. And he says, "Oh, I just want to tell you one more thing. This encounter happened this morning. It was with Grays, and they told me to call you." I said, "What?" I mean, this guy's from England. He doesn't know me. I don't know him. He says, "Yeah, they said you need to call Preston Dennett." I'm like, wow. So that was after Dolly Saffron, who, of course, had basically been referred to me as well. Another contactee told me that. So at that point, I'm like, wow, well, I guess I'm on the Grays, 411 for people to talk to. It's bizarre.
Are the Grays paying you for this? Be honest.
Not in money, no, but I do get an occasional sighting, a little howdy do every now and then. I would say my last really good one was because, every couple of years I will get a sighting. Often after I put out a book, hey, I haven't had one, so maybe I'll get one for this latest book. But yeah, it had been a while. It was September, 2019. Could have been 2018. I wrote it down. And I just had a feeling they were out there. I was living in Reseda in Southern California, and I went out into my backyard and I looked up like, "Hey guys, this little earthworm is stuck down here. Say hi. I deserve a sighting. I've been writing books for you." Because you just get a feeling sometimes that they're around. And as I was looking up into the sky, right where I was looking was this quick flash of light. It was a full second, though. I mean, not like a blink. It came on, went off. And I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. But it was a little ambiguous, and I'm like, really? That's all you can do? Is that the best you can do? And at that moment, this owl came swooping down right over my head. I'm going to say 20 feet. This is in Reseda, and if you know Reseda, there's no owls around there. I mean, there just isn't. I've never seen one. I lived there 10 years. So I felt that was connected to that. I don't know. The whole owl thing does turn up with UFOs. But
Very much.
It's really cool. I've got a connection to these guys for sure.
Yeah, no, I can understand your connection with the ETs. I mean, they just seem to show up whenever they want. I mean, in the most comfortable or uncomfortable situations. I mean, out of all the cases that you have studied over the years, Preston, there's always the great debate going on from the government on down about a threat narrative that we got to get ready to take these out. They want to take away humanity. They want to, smack us around and make it look like Independence Day until our F-18s go and blow their ships out of the sky. Okay, they make it look very, very bastardly. And I'm curious. Out of all the people you have talked to and interviewed over the years, including your I'm going to call her your better half, because no offense, she's much prettier than you. With all these,
Hey, all right, fine. I'll agree with that. Yeah.
but I'm curious, what do you think the ETs want? What do you think they're doing here?
Oh, lots of things. I'm not sure there's any real simple answer to that. But having collected so many firsthand accounts, I think my research matches up with what a lot of other researchers have found. And one major agenda for sure is pulling people on board and healing them in some capacity, whether it's just collecting their genetics and making sure everything's all right and a little health checkup, or actually physically healing them. Because that was the subject of my first book, UFO Healings. I put it out again. 300 cases, Dave, from pretty much every major researcher. I can list them all. John Mack, David Jacobs, Bud Hopkins, Barbara Lamb, Yvonne Smith, Tim Beckley. I mean, all of them. Timothy Good. So that's definitely one of the things they're doing, which I think is out of a sense of their ability to do it, or out of a sense of a relationship with us. Because that is a message a lot of contactees get, is basically we share the same heritage. We are you, you are us. But beyond that, there's multiple agendas. One for sure is to warn people. Because over and over again, if someone gets any kind of information or any communication from ETs beyond, don't be afraid, you're fine, we're not here to hurt you, everything's okay, no harm will come to you. They always say that pretty much every single time. But beyond that, they will warn people about nuclear proliferation. That comes up all the time. Our use of nuclear weapons or nuclear materials, and really our warlike ways, our greed and aggression towards each other, greed, divisiveness. They warn against pollution. They warn against the destruction of the environment. Warnings, messages along those lines, which I think speaks to their agenda, why they're here. This is not someone who's trying to take over. This is someone who's trying to guide us. And that's another thing we see is they will provide information in terms of how they power their own craft. I've got a lot of cases of it. There was a guy, Jim Kubelbeck, who was on the USS Valley Forge and had an encounter with 10 fellow officers and believes he was taken on board. And they showed him the engine room. I hear this all the time, this sort of thing. And they explained the whole history of how we use energy on this planet and that we could do much better, and that they power their craft using electromagnetism and the harnessing of the gravitational field lines of our planet. So that's another thing that they're trying to do, is inform people. And what else? Wake people up. And by that I mean just show off. This is why we have encounters like the Ariel Elementary School in Rua, Zimbabwe, which I thought was a one-off. No. I've got over 100 cases. I wrote schoolyard UFO encounters because there's Westall High School, there's Crestville Elementary School, Hillsdale College, Broadhaven. There's 100 cases that I found all across the world starting in 1950. And these are just simple announcements of their presence, saying we are here. And I found the same sort of thing going on at drive-in movie theaters all across the US and into Canada a little bit, actually. In fact, there was one case in Canada on Prince Edward Island, I think, where UFOs showed up so often over the drive-in theater that they put it on their marquee. If you want to see a UFO, come to our theater. So this is an agenda. They're doing a publicity campaign to just let us know we're not alone, which I think comes from the fact that our governments won't. And they're like, all right, you won't do it. We will find a way and do it ourselves. A grassroots campaign.
This actually happened to a famous Canadian violinist and folk music recording artist, Ashley McIsaac. During one of his concerts, his sister actually saw a 4-light UFO fly right over the stage, and he was able to see it from the stage.
Wow. Yeah, it happened at an Ozzy Osbourne concert at oh gosh, Jimi Hendrix, I think, there's a number of them. I couldn't find as many as I found at like schoolyards, but sporting events as well. High school football games. There was a huge one in Italy. Something like 10 or 20,000 people saw this UFO. It dropped angel hair and everything. So yeah, they're announcing their presence. But
What is angel hair?
angel hair, well, it's a good question. We don't know for sure. Well, Dolly told me, I will say that because I had questions. But angel hair is a cotton candy, kind of spider webby like substance that appears to be a byproduct of the plasma fields surrounding these craft, which reach very high temperatures and interact with the atmosphere and sometimes just drop loads of this stuff. And there was a famous case in San Fernando Valley, very close to where I lived, literally 2 blocks away. I wasn't there, but that was in the 70s. Probably my favorite case occurred at Whitsett Elementary School. That was, let me see, early 60s. But everyone was on the playground, and it fell inches deep. They collected it up. They sent it off to scientific labs, Burlington Labs. Couldn't identify it. He said, send it to a biologist. It might be spider webs. The biologist said, no, there's no way this is spider webs. But yeah, this is one of the kids on the playground actually put it in his mouth, tried to eat it. He said it tasted really bad. So it's not cotton candy, but it has been studied in a lab. It usually disintegrates pretty quickly, within seconds if you touch it especially. But sometimes it stays there. And it's found to have certain elements like, oh gosh, chromium, magnesium, boron, elements that shouldn't be just lying around in these kind of phosphorescent fiberglass-like strands. Yeah, that's angel hair. There's about 100 cases in the literature of it.
Wow. Well, unbelievable. We have 2 minutes to go here before we have to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Author and researcher Preston Dennett is with us. Night 1 of 2 on Spaced Out Radio in a row. He's on with me, and then on our YouTube channel with After Hours tomorrow night. All right, Preston, I want to get to the idea that humanoids and all of these different type of species that people are interacting with. What attracted you to this topic?
I was actually repulsed by it for years, particularly because they were humanoids. So I wanted ETs to be the Blob. You know, I wanted them to have tentacles and claws and just different from us. So I resisted it for years until I heard a report on the news, 1986, about a sighting over Alaska. You've probably heard of it. It's a November 17, 1986. Japanese commercial airliner was paced by 2 giant UFOs. It was on the evening news. I couldn't believe it. And that's when I remembered my brother Mark, my older brother. I have 3 older brothers. And he had said he'd seen a UFO, chased it in his car. And I didn't believe him. I was like 14 at the time when he came running in and said that. But I asked him, because now I was 21 years old when that happened. Pretty young still. And yeah, he described this incredible sighting. I mean, he chased it down the road. A silver saucer with lights on it, a dome on top, treetop level, perfectly silent, 50, 100 feet away, and had witnesses with him. And that's when I found out, Dave, that so I had my sister-in-law, my other sister-in-law, 2 friends, 3 friends, a bunch of people at work, all were having encounters. Yeah, it hit
Preston, on that note, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the bottom of the hour. Preston Dennett is with us tonight on Spaced Out Radio. His brand new book on Amazon, Humanoids and High Strangeness, 20 True UFO Encounters. We're going to start to get into this book and more with one of the best authors in the UFO world, Preston Dennett on Spaced Out Radio. I know you're a real humble dude, but seriously, you are one of the best out there, man. You really are.
Well, I appreciate that. I kind of find that shocking that I've even at all known, because I just never thought in a million years that this would be something I would be doing. I mean, really.
Mm. Well, you've got the talent, my man, and you've got the skills, and everybody who reads your books is better off for it. Really is.
Well, thanks you very much. I appreciate that. I wish more people were doing it. I don't understand why this isn't way, way more popular. I mean, MUFON, the MUFON organization, still only has a few thousand members. I don't get it. You'd think now, with all the news going on, that this subject would really be exploding. It is a little bit. It's still a niche subject.
Very true. Very true. But for a lot of people, I think what's happened, Preston, with a lot of the newbies coming into this field, and it's no fault of their own, but they see, what the government is doing, and they're following this UAP crap rather than digging into the real encounters, the real stories of UFOs and encounters with extraterrestrials, ultra-terrestrials, whatever you want to call them. They haven't made it that far yet because they're so concentrated on the government side of this fake disclosure.
Yeah, UAP, I hate that term. Ufology is a term people use. Now, if you have to translate that to UAP, it's UApology.
UApology. Yep, that's right.
I think they may have figured that out. Yeah, isn't that funny? UApology right now. Like, you guys did that on purpose.
Well, you know what? I had always kind of been convinced that this whole UAP thing, although people have been calling it UAPs for decades behind the scenes, I thought really that this new one, and it convinced me back in February 100% when the drones and the balloons were being taken down, that when you hear them talk UAPs, they're talking about man-made craft. They're not talking UFOs.
But then why are they called unidentified? I don't know. It's just a mess. They used to call them UAOs, unidentified aerial objects, UAVs, unidentified aerial vehicles. To me, all of them mean the same thing. It's a craft. Let's just call it what it is. I feel like we have enough evidence now that we should not be calling this a mystery. I think it's pretty clear that these are extraterrestrials in craft from other places. I think the idea of them being from other planets makes perfect sense, because we're from a planet. There's got to be other people out there.
Mm-hmm. Let us see. Hello, D. Henderson. How are you? Who else has showed up here? La 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 la. Right. Let's see here.
Susan Alloway.
Susan Alloway.
She's in the book, by the way.
Is she?
Yes, she is.
If Susan Alloway didn't tell us that, here she is in our chat room all the time and hiding secrets like this.
I'm telling you, most people don't talk about their encounters. She's bravely stepped forward, so kudos to her.
Right on. The fire closest to me is contained. That's good news. Chill Farm, how are you? Susan Alloway is changing her name to Chapter 19. She says so. She said so right here. I am Chapter 19. I I'm going to call you Chapter 19 from now on, Susan.
That's her middle name.
Yep. Big thank you tonight to Pam and W. Decker ×2, Louie ×2, Deb, Derek, Jenny, and Science Bob for the great super chats. Thank you for the love and support. Don't forget, our Space Travelers Club is now open. I'll put the link in the group here, and here we go with the next hour or half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Second half hour of Spaced Out Radio is now underway. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Always appreciate earning your listening ears. Reminder to all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the newswire, check out our swag. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and you can join our brand new Space Travelers Club at Patreon. All right, here we go. Preston Dennett, great author, researcher. His website, prestondennett.weebly.com, where you can find all of his books, including his latest, Humanoids and High Strangeness, 20 True UFO Encounters. This man puts out at least 3 to 4 books a year, if not more, regarding these incredible stories, true stories that people have encountered. Preston, thank you so much for what you do. And the one thing that I love about what you do, Preston, is even though we're dealing with real sci-fi like topics, these are true stories. There's nothing made up. There's no creepypasta. It's all real.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I love science fiction. I actually was considering writing. Well, I do write some science fiction, actually. But yeah, this is my true love, because if you can write about actual ETs, that's much more profound, much more interesting. I do want to give a shout out to Tony DeTata. He's in another one of my books. Hi, Tony. Awesome that you're here. Very cool.
All right, so let's talk about this brand new book, Humanoids and High Strangeness, 20 True UFO Encounters. I mean, you take us on a trip right around North America, from stories, from coast to coast up into Canada. What were you looking for in this book? What qualified for it?
Everyone in this book had to have seen humanoids of some kind. And pretty much all of them, when I say humanoids, is ETs in the classic sense, at least in my interpretation. But not just humanoids. I mean, we've got people who are seeing all manners of spirits, demonic, good spirits, angelic spirits. Bigfoot comes up a couple of times. All different types of humanoids too. Grays, little blue beings, tall whites, human-looking ETs, praying mantis. Pretty much all of them come up at some point. And this isn't just in the US or even Canada. I've got a case in Argentina, one in Peru, a guy in France, one in England. One of the witnesses lived in China, had experiences there partially, but moved back to the US. New Zealand, I mean, all over the world, really. So that, I think, is really cool, because you get sort of a different perspective sometimes with these other places. But yeah, every one of these people had experiences with humanoids, and pretty much all of them had a lifetime of experiences. So, it's not just one event.
Are these people in this book multiple experiencers, or are they first timers that, all of a sudden had the ultimate experience?
Well, usually in every person who has, this happening to them, there's one or two really major experiences. And then there's minor visitations where they'll come into your bedroom and off they go, or you have missing time. But most of them, have had some really big whoppers of experiences. I'm trying to think if there's anyone who's had just a simple one-off. Oh yeah, there's a few. I mean, one guy, he is from Argentina. I think that got that right. Yeah, Hector Sawiak. He's a private pilot, actually, and a bank manager, and has multiple degrees, and grew up without any UFO experiences, really at all, but became interested in them when there was sightings in his area. And so he drove out of the city with a telescope and its instrumentation to see if he could see anything. He didn't, but he went home that night and woke up to his name being called telepathically in his head. So he gets out of bed and goes to the window and sees this enormous bright object moving across the sky, too fast to be a plane, too slow to be a meteor. And it called his name, so that really freaked him out. And it was just a few weeks later that he woke up to the big experience. And this is the only experience he's had, where these two, I can't call them grays, but they're not quite human looking, wearing jumpsuits. One was like 6 feet tall, 6.5. The other was closer to 5.5. And he said that he was really scared laying in bed as soon as they appeared, but they told him, "You have nothing to fear." He says at that point, all his fear left him, and he felt this love coming from them. He said, "Preston, when I say love, this was a love I've never felt before. Not from my wife, not from my child, not from my parents." He says it was this absolute all-encompassing feeling of just love from these beings. And they walked up to him and held his head and said, "We want you to take this pill. We are going to heal you." And he thought that was strange because he was fine. He was not ill as far as he knew. But he took this little triangular pill. He says it was just a tiny little pill, and swallowed it and passed out. And he woke up in the morning. He could feel the tears dry down his face, and was a little bit nauseous for like 3 days. But that was basically it. He told his family. They're like, okay. Luckily, they supported him. They knew he wasn't going to lie about anything like this. But that to me is an interesting case because a couple of reasons. One, he basically asked to see them. He went out looking for them, and they didn't show up that night. They showed up late. That day they showed up later that night, and then came right into his room. So in a way, I guess you could call that a close encounter of the fifth kind. But also I found it interesting because he was in such terror until they actually started speaking to him. And he felt this overwhelming sense of love, which I have heard from other people. It was a very benevolent encounter for him.
That sounds just so creative and peaceful, the way you would hope it would be.
Yeah, doesn't always go that way for people. But good for him.
What about, you got one story in here, and because I'm Canadian, of course I'm going to bring this one up. Caught my attention right off the bat. 2 young boys meet a mysterious UFO contactee named Peter, who then sends them out on an adventure that changes their lives. Who is Peter and these boys?
Yeah, well, I wish I knew who Peter was. He's either a contactee or an ET himself. This is probably my favorite chapter in the whole book, honestly, because this gentleman didn't contact me. It was his son who contacted me and said, "I really want you to talk to my dad." And I'm like, "Well, if your dad wants to talk to me, I will." He says, "Well, I'll get him to talk to you because he has this amazing story." So I don't use their real names. I call his dad Carter, and Carter had a best friend named Jackson, right? So they're little boys in Ontario, Canada, and they walked to school each day. They were neighbors, so that's how they got to know each other. And one day Jackson's really pensive and silent, and Carter's like, "What's up?" And Jackson says, "Well, I don't want to tell you. I don't think you're going to believe me." And Carter's like, "I know you. Just tell me what happened." And Jackson explained that he had had this major out-of-body experience. And so this is how this all began. After he had this out-of-body experience, they became really interested in that and started looking to have more paranormal experiences. And we're going to bookstores and trying to figure this out, and we're meditating and never really got there until one day. This is such a weird story. Jackson is walking along, because they did a lot of hitchhiking back then. They lived kind of far away. And this truck pulls over, and out come these two guys who tell Jackson, be careful of that guy in there. He's a bit strange. And these two guys walk out into a field. And this is out in the middle of nowhere. So that's weird. And then Jackson gets into the truck, and there's this enormously obese man who introduces himself as Peter and says, "Hi, Jackson. How is the astral projection going?" Now, this guy doesn't know him, so he could not know this. And he's blown away. He's like, how did you know that? And Peter, the obese guy, is like, well, we've been keeping an eye on you. We're really impressed. You're young, and yet you're really into these spiritual subjects. Well, we think you'll do well. And basically said that he was a contactee who worked on UFOs transporting stuff. And so he met him again later, and the guy was doing psychic exercises with him in this little basement apartment outside of the city. And this is when his friend Carter heard about it and says, I want to meet this guy. I'm going to shorten this a little because it's kind of a long story, but finally, this guy shows up. He drives a different car every single time, shows up and talks to Carter, Jackson, and two of their friends. And Carter had a little cabin out beyond the city, and he was going to drive him up there. And Carter sat in the front seat because he knew the way, and the other guys were in the back. And this guy, he says, was just not a normal guy. He could read your mind. He could control the weather. He could call forth the wind. He had all these supernatural abilities and would talk about UFOs and was trying to get them to develop their psychic abilities. So they had this long conversation, took him up to the cabin and left. And this is when two of the kids came running into the cabin. Carter was still in the cabin and said, "We just saw a Martian." And Carter's like, "What are you talking about?" Back then there were no accounts of grays. This was some time ago. And they described what we now know as the typical gray. And Carter felt all left out until a couple of days later, he's walking across this bridge. I've got the name of the bridge in the book. And sure enough, there was this gray. And this is so interesting to me because he's looking at this gray who's right there in the parking lot below the bridge. And as soon as Carter sees this gray, and this is about 100 feet away, he jerks. Carter jerks and he's like, "Oh my God, it's an alien." And at that point, this gray kind of mimicked him and jerked the same way.
No way.
Yeah, kind of playfully. And Carter went, "Huh," and looked at him. And the alien did the same exact thing, went, "Huh," and looked at him. It was kind of just playfully mimicking him. And that's when his friends came running up, and this ET turned invisible. He knew it was still there. He could sense it, but it wouldn't show itself to the other friends because they had already apparently seen it. And then he had a major UFO encounter. He talked to Peter again. This guy was, this is a long story. I'll tell you one interesting end note because he just kind of disappeared from their lives. And Carter was devastated. But then the cousin was in a fast food joint, and sure enough, Carter pulls up, and he's in a car with these gangsters, these kind of thug-looking kids. And the cousin wanted to run up and say, "Oh my God, Peter, it's you. Can we talk to you?" Well, the cousin was paralyzed, could not move from the restaurant. He was in the seat at the fast food joint and couldn't move for 15 minutes while this guy, Peter, picked up the food with the thugs, and off he went. And that was the last they ever saw him. But he was something else, this guy. Once they asked him, he said, "You don't need to eat." And he says, I get all my food from the sunlight. I'm like, you're kidding. He's like, no, you don't need to eat. You can actually get energy from the sunlight. And I've gave up food long ago. This is actually a thing. I've studied this. It's called inedia. There are recorded, well-verified instances of this from saints and other people who survive without food. Not kidding. This has been scientifically studied. So apparently this guy was talking about this. And Carter burst out laughing and says, then why are you so fat? The guy roared with laughter. And he says, well, I take this form on because as I walk down the street, people notice me. And I can instantly read them and see if they're ready to be taught. So that's why I have this body. So, yeah, it's a wild story.
And once again, you can get that in Preston's brand new book on Amazon or on his website, prestondennett.weebly.com. Humanoids and High Strangeness, 20 True UFO Encounters. Preston, when you are putting these stories together and you are researching the high strangeness that happens, people are seeing not only grays, but reptilians, mantid beings. I mean, I don't know how I would react to seeing these type of creatures. And a few weeks ago, we were at a haunted place in the middle of the night in the forest, and I tried the Estes method. And my buddy Merle was asking the questions, and I didn't see anything. Or pardon me, I didn't hear anything. No responses. That didn't surprise me. But what I did see, even though I'm blindfolded, was the first time I saw reptilian eyes. And it freaked me out a little bit. I'm used to seeing grays. That was the first time I'd seen reptilian eyes, and that's all I saw. And it looked like alligator eyes, except the eyes were a brighter orange-ish yellow. And it was weird to me because I'd never experienced that before, and it troubled me a little bit. People who have those encounters with reptilians and mantids, how does it go for them?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on the individual. There was one lady who, her name is Sandra. She had a very interesting experience when she was, let me see, I wrote it down. She's 8 years old. This was 1947. She's in Albuquerque and had decided to walk to her friend's house, which was about a mile away, and was walking down the road when she felt this shadow pass over her and looked up, and there's this metallic craft coming down, and it lands right on the road, covering the entire width of the highway. This is a remote highway. And a door opens up, and there's a mantid looking out at her, and it's waving towards her saying, come, come. And Sandra is like, wow, this is a big, tall bug looking thing, like 6 feet tall. And she was curious. She didn't have any fear, walked up to it, and this mantid said, you don't need to be afraid. I'm your mother, which was a strange thing to say, but this is what the being said. And she invited Sandra on board the craft. This wasn't a quote abduction. This was an invitation. And she went on board, and there was what she thought at first were little children who were rushing up to feel her blonde hair. Now, Sandra had lived in China, and people were fascinated with her blonde hair, so she's kind of used to this. And she's looking at all these little beings, and these were grays, as it turned out. They were little, short beings, very playful, and were kind of chirping, she said, and chirruping, and just kind of running around her, and took her hands and took her through the craft, and took her to the window so she could look outside. And at that point, she saw that she was actually in outer space. There was a big star field. Had never felt any movement, had literally just gotten on board this craft, and was shocked to find that she's no longer on Earth. She's way the heck up there. And this mantid is just kind of watching everything and being very nurturing and kind, and took her into the center of the craft where there was this holographic little box type machine. Sandra said it looked very much like a television, though she didn't have a television, didn't know what a TV was back then. And out came this hologram in full color, which was miniature, a couple of feet. And it showed tanks on the street and bombs blowing up, and people shooting guns and smoke in the air, just scenes of war. And they said, basically, you need to tell people to change their ways or this will happen. Mind you, she's just 8 years old. So that was the message they gave her. This is the message that they give a lot of people. And that's all she really remembers. Next thing she knows, she's waking up in the bathroom of the family home. And the family is out of their minds because she was missing for 2 hours. And they found her on the highway next to her bike. She had actually biked to the neighbor's house. But she has no memory of that. She doesn't remember being put down or being picked up by her parents. So that was her first encounter. It would be one of many. But yeah, she saw mantids, and it was absolutely a friendly experience for her.
What did these mantids look like? Were they the prototypical mantid headed like on a bug? Did they look more alien, like grays? What did they look like?
Well, you get various descriptions, but it's pretty actually consistent with the mantids because they're generally speaking anywhere between 6 to 9 feet tall. But I have to say I have a couple of outliers of 15 feet, but very thin stick-like bodies with short little arms that kind of hook up like a puppy dog begging, with kind of clawed hands, very long, thin legs, a thin, tall neck or long neck, a triangular head, flat on top, coming to a point on the bottom, and big eyes. I mean, one guy, a Navy medic who saw a 15-foot tall mantid, said that they were bone white and had thin skin, so you could almost see the organs through their skin. But he said their eyeballs were as big as basketballs, bigger than his head. He was scared, even though his encounter was overall really benevolent. He was quite frightened through the whole thing. Because let's face it, this thing was 15 feet tall. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty consistent. Even the way they move, people will describe them moving with very bug-like movements, jerky movements. They sit in a certain way with their legs forming a sort of triangle when they sit down. Yeah, very consistent descriptions.
Wow. We got 90 seconds to go before we have to go to break. At the top of the hour, Preston Dennett is with us tonight. Preston, I mean, a lot of these cases, these aliens seem to be having messages, like you said earlier, clean up the environment, watch what you eat, no more nukes, be nice to one another. Why do you think that message is so consistent?
Because I think we've reached a point where we could destroy ourselves, our civilization, and the entire planet. And that matches up with what's going on, because this wasn't going on in the 1800s, not to this degree. But when we started exploding nuclear bombs, 1940s, mid-1940s, that's when it really started happening. There weren't even humanoid encounters, people being taken on board, really in the 1940s. It ramped up big time in the 1950s, especially in the 1960s and 70s, but continued up since then. And I think that's when they said, okay, these guys are on the wrong path. They need to know this. We need to help them out because they're going to destroy their planet.
Well, we are a young species. That's for sure. We are not very old, and face it, for as smart as some people are on this planet, overall, we're eclectically not very smart. That's to be debated. Preston Dennett.weebly.com. His new book, Humanoids and High Strangeness, 20 True UFO Encounters. We're going to continue with these great stories. Maybe we'll take some audience questions as well in hour number 2. Spaced Out Radio continues right after this. All right, buddy. We are clear. Alex Sanchez, how you doing? I'm going to take a quick break. Preston, I'm going to put you back in the green room for a couple minutes. I'll be right back, okay?
That's fine. Yep.
All right. Be right back, people. All right, I am back. Let's see here. Magneticus, how are you? Who else jumped in here? The Demon, Superknower. Good to see you guys. Blue Cruise. Thanks for joining us. Anybody make my chair move tonight? No? All right. Let's bring Preston back in. There we are. We got about 45 seconds. All right. I want to say a big thank you tonight to Pam H, W Decker ×2, Forrest Louis ×2, Deb, Derek, Jenny, Science Bob, and Lord William for the great super chats. Very much appreciate the love and support. You could also join our Space Travelers Club on Patreon, which you can find in the description down below. I'll put it out here in the chat room as well. Brandon Blount, by the way, thank you to Lynn McKenzie for being our next super chatter, or pardon me, space traveler. We really appreciate you, Lynn, for joining us. And here we go with hour number 2.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott. Follow Dave on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live, and KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Vacherin. Vacherin is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the Newswire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. You can also support us by joining our Space Travelers Club. Head on over to Patreon and just look for it up. All right, Preston Dennett is here. He's got a brand new book out, Humanoids and High Strangeness, 20 True UFO Encounters, and it's available on Amazon or his website, PrestonDennett.weebly.com. Preston, it is always a pleasure to have you here. And with all of these encounters that you've included, one thing that I love is patterns. I love trying to find patterns in things because I think patterns really help solve some of these mysteries. In all the stories that you have collected for this new book and others, have you noticed any patterns going on?
Yeah, well, one immediately comes to mind, which is, I think, the first chapter in the book. This gentleman, Richard Simon, called me because at age 7, he suddenly stopped sleeping for no reason he could fathom. He just had really severe insomnia from that age on into adulthood and never could figure out why. But he did get very interested in astronomy and space travel and Lost in Space and all the science fiction at that age. And as a young adult, his mom, her name is Ines, who she smoked cigarettes and decided she was going to go to a hypnotherapist to quit smoking. And she's like, son, why don't you come along and maybe we can get help with your insomnia? And he's like, no, I don't want to do that. I don't trust hypnotism. She's like, listen, this is a legitimate hypnotist. Her name is Retha something or other. I forget her last name, but it is in the book. At any rate, she finally convinced him to go to the hypnotherapist. She went in first, and he's sitting in the waiting room, and he can hear her crying through the walls. And finally, after an hour, comes out. She's still weepy and freaking out. And the hypnotherapist sits her down and says, you're all right. You're awake. Everything's fine. And Richard turns to her and says, Mom, what happened? And she says, just go in and talk to her, and you'll be fine. And so he goes in and sits down, and Retha asks him, so you can't sleep? Why? Do you know why? And he's like, I have no idea. I've just never been able to sleep. I feel like there's intruders in the house, people watching me from outside. I just can't sleep at night. And she says, well, let's see if we can figure this out. And she puts him into a trance, which took a good 20 minutes. And suddenly he saw this light kind of glaring in his eyes and started squinting. And she asked him, why are you squinting? And he says, I'm seeing lights. And she said, well, what do you see anything else? And that's when he saw grays, the faces of grays looking down at him. And just like a dam breaking, he remembered having been pulled on board a craft at age 7. And in fact, his mom was pulled on board with him. And it wasn't a particularly pleasant encounter because he was very scared. And they just basically told him, you're going to be fine. They were operating or doing something on his stomach. Turned out later he would have a problem with his stomach, and he believed they were helping him. So ultimately he is okay with his encounters. But, and his mom recalled the same thing, so they matched up together. And as an adult, he married, had kids, and his 7-year-old daughter, he's watching TV, right? And there's a UFO show on, and it features a gray. And his daughter was playing Barbies in the other room, says, Daddy, I need to talk to you. And Richard's like, can't talk now. I'm watching TV. Can you wait till a commercial? And she says, no, it's important. And he turns to her and said, what's the problem? And she pointed to the TV, and she says, that's what's coming into my room at night and poking things in my nose. She'd been having a bloody nose. And it was at age 7. And his mom, Ines, also recalled at age 7 being visited by a being. So now this is 3 generations of people being visited at the exact same age. Well, just recently, that same 7-year-old daughter is now grown up, married, living in Georgia, had kids. That kid is 7 years old. And just a couple of years ago, started complaining about the monkey man looking outside of her window and then coming into her room. So that's 4 generations of people all being visited at age 7 is when it began. So that was one pattern which really did strike me.
Children are always a tough topic. You've dealt with many cases where children are involved with extraterrestrials, whether it's the school incidents or whether it's an incident like you just messaged here a couple seconds ago. When you are dealing with cases with children, how different are they compared to what adults experience?
Oh, well, not that different, really. They're, of course, very innocent and precious. I love children. But most of the people I've talked to, I have to say, are adults and will describe instances that they did have as young children, because this does start when they're very young kids. But if I'm going to speak to a kid, and I don't have a problem with it, I do insist that the adult is present. And that hasn't happened a lot, but it has happened. I mean, there was one kid who swore up and down he saw a UFO, and his dad really wanted me to interview him. I said, okay, as long as you're there, I will do it. And I was tough on the poor guy because I wanted to make sure that he wasn't seeing a helicopter. And I said, how do you know this wasn't a helicopter? He said, it made no noise. It made no noise. And I'm like, well, how did it move? Was it, describe to me how it moved in the sky? And because I'm looking for unconventional movement, the observables that we hear about. Does it look strange? Does it sound strange? Does it move strange? Is it exhibiting quick acceleration and right angles and hovering? And he was describing all of these things. He was a good witness. I think children actually do make excellent witnesses. And when I had family members who were having sightings, well, or encounters, really, I mean, my nephew had a full-on humanoid encounter. I did interview him without his dad, who is skeptical. But I did tell his mom, because his mom had seen humanoids as well. So yeah, when it's family, it's a little different. But often, yeah, I did have one lady from Canada actually ask if I would interview her daughter. And I said, listen, here's what I want you to do. You should really do it. Because have her write everything down, have her draw pictures. Don't make this all woo-woo and strange. And if she has questions about it, explain that you yourself have experienced these kinds of things. So yeah, it's a little bit more delicate, but I think it's important because so many times I've talked to adults who had encounters as kids, went to their parents and were not believed. So this is a note to all parents out there that if your kid starts describing things coming into the room, pay attention. I mean, one lady I did talk to had taken her 14-year-old son to the dentist, and they found an implant under his tooth. He wouldn't talk to me. He was too shy. But I kind of interviewed him through her over the phone and found out that he had, in fact, had a sighting, which he was keeping secret from his mom. Did not tell her. She's like, why, honey? I asked you. It's like, Mom, I didn't want to scare you. But yeah, he had an actual implant, which they sent the x-rays. Yeah.
What do you think these implants are for? Tracking devices? Data gathering?
I think data gathering would be a fair statement. Tracking, no, I doubt it. Because this is then the subject of a lot of speculation. And people are like, well, it's mind control. We track animals. That's what they're doing to us. I do know of a case of a lady, I interviewed her, who had her implant removed by Dr. Roger Lear. And the ETs came right back and put it back in. One of the first people I interviewed asked the ETs flat out, what are you doing? And they said, we're putting in an implant. And she said, why? What is this for? And they said, this is to measure the levels of pollution in your body. And that was really interesting. That's the first time I heard that, but it wouldn't be the last time. And often it's something to do with health. Measure the levels of pollution in your body, boost the immune system, measure your vital signs, something along those lines. And so when Dolly came along, which is still fairly recent in terms of my UFO investigations, and her having so much knowledge of these kinds of things, I asked her, what about alien implants? And she says, well, a couple of things. She has one which helps her pilot the craft, but she says they're often health related. They use it to monitor your vital signs so they know if you're in trouble or not. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what I've heard. So that's what I think they're for, honestly.
I've never heard that. So I would take your research way above mine, that's for sure. So I'm just going to go with it. I hope you don't mind. That just sounds.
Yeah, but
that
I'm not.
Sounds proper.
The important point is I'm not speculating like so many researchers do. Like, they're for mind control. I'm like, well, show me. Where's your case that points to that? Because I don't see it. This is what people are being told.
The people who are being taken, are they developing further abilities, whether it's psychic intuition, channeling, premonitions?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I think it's a two-way street because we do see a lot of people who've had near-death experiences as children or a lifetime of psychic events also having contact. But over and over and over again, people who have a major onboard experience will start having astral projection, past life recall, human levitation, will actually start flying around in their bedrooms or what have you, channeling, clairvoyance, precognition, healing comes up a lot. I think they're getting a huge boost. There was one lady I interviewed. She had little silver suited beings come into her room. This is near Mount Rainier, Washington. And it wasn't a particularly pleasant experience for her. It kind of frightened her. But she knew it would physically happen because when she woke up, she was sitting on top of her blankets. And she had seen lights coming into the building. Other people in the building apparently saw lights, but that was it. So she woke up feeling kind of ill and unwell, fluish, if you will, kind of just not particularly well. And she goes to work, sits down in front of her computer and blows it out. She knocks it offline, calls over the IT guy and says, "I'm really sorry. I don't know what happened. It just went off." Goes to the copier machine and tries to turn it on, and bam, blows that out. And tells the IT guy, "Well, after you're done with that, come over here," and goes to the fax machine and knocks it offline. So at that point, it was clear to her that something was going on with her, I guess you would call it your bioelectric field. And I hear this all the time. That same guy I mentioned who saw a reptilian got called into his office at work where he worked with a welding machine that he kept knocking offline every time he would get near it. And they finally pinned it down to him because the machine was fine, except when he used it. And they demanded he undergo a physical examination to figure out what it was. And couldn't find anything, except there was this implant in his jaw. But yeah, it's the same sort of thing. He says he goes through light bulbs like nobody's business. And I see this all the time. One lady, she could turn lights on and off with her mind. So yeah, psychic abilities is a big part of this. It wakes people up. And this is part of their agenda. They want people to become fully realized human beings, to develop the abilities, which we call supernatural, but they're not. These are not supernatural abilities. These are natural. We're supposed to be telepathic. We're supposed to have clairvoyance and precognition and healing. Dolly levitated a bunch of times as a young kid. She did not offer me that information when I was interviewing her. I had to ask her because I kept running into this. In fact, the lady I mentioned earlier, Sandra, who had an encounter with praying mantis ETs, her mom says she was floating above her crib one morning. She came over to the crib and there she was, just floating above it. This is not someone being pulled up into a craft. This is an ability that we all have. It's just latent. And the ETs are trying so hard to let us know that we can do these things.
All right, let's get to a couple of audience questions here. Let's start off with Silent Listen, who is asking, Preston, have any reports of abductees waking up with a sunburned face or in their underarms being burned?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. This does happen, particularly if it's a major encounter. Susan, who's in chat, did have this happen to her, and it was pretty severe, actually, after she had an encounter in the Utah desert. So her case in that regard is more severe than most. Some people do just have a simple redness or sunburn. Eye irritation is fairly common. A good number of contactees suffer from light sensitivity in their eyes, which is related to all of this. There's a whole host of physiological symptoms that people have, and that's one of them for sure. Yeah.
What other side effects can happen?
Oh, well, we see, of course, insomnia. People who, in terms of physiological effects, there's the psychic effects, which I mentioned. The TVs will fuzz up, or radios, light bulbs will burst. They can't wear watches. This is very prominent. People, of course, will report occasionally cuts or bruises or needle marks on their body following an encounter that heal up super quick. That's a real good marker because I mean, one guy, he had diabetes and his cuts take forever to heal. He said, not this time. When he would return from the encounter, he'd have a little cut. It would be gone the next day. So that sort of thing does turn up. Of course, implants, people go to the doctor, or as often as not the dentist, and they'll say, what's this in your foot? Did you break your leg? What's this? Looks like you have a laser mark on your stomach. All kinds of medical things turn up. There was one, I didn't interview this case actually, but I read about it, where someone went to the doctor and their appendix was gone. And they had never had their appendix removed. So that sort of thing happens occasionally. People will say, oh, you had surgery. That I have run into several times. Doctors have accused people of having had surgery. And no, they haven't. So there's all kinds of these kinds of things that can happen.
All right. I think we got time for one or two more questions here. Neil is asking, have you ever heard of people reporting about AI robot beings, almost like the Transformers?
No, I'm not like Transformers. AI beings, yeah, certainly. There are people who report little robotic beings. One lady I interviewed, Pat Brown, was taken on board. There were grays, and she said there was a little robot-like thing going around the table. And I've certainly read about robotic beings and AI grays in particular. These are the little 3-foot tall grays, 4 foot, which aren't super emotional. And often they're the ones who come in and scoop you out of bed, and they don't seem to be very responsive to a person's emotions. People will say, oh, they had no emotions. Well, yeah, in a certain sense, that's true. And talking to Dolly and other contactees, Dolly described, just like Whitley Strieber, these things can turn off and on. And you can stack them up or put them in a closet and turn them on and off. So yeah, there's definitely robotic or synthetic android type beings, but I don't have any which change shape or form. I don't have cases of that personally, I should say. I don't think I've even really read about that kind of thing. I mean, there are screen memories where people will see ETs that can put on a different image, but not transform.
But are all beings biological? I mean, there's some sense that maybe the grays are some sort of biological robot.
Yeah, well, the little AI grays, yeah, I think they are exactly that, biological. They're beings like us. They have genetics. Over and over again, people who've encountered these beings have been told we share the same genetic heritage. Dolly's huge on this. She's like, they all have DNA like we do. And I think that that's absolutely true, because people who are taken on board smell organic odors. You can smell these guys. They were described as woodsy or kind of a cinnamony, or just kind of, they have a certain odor to them. They're biological beings, absolutely. And there's all different forms of these humanoids. They're all humanoids, but I think that they are biological beings very much like us, more like us, really, than different.
Right. Okay. So do we know if they bleed? Do we know if they suffer?
Yeah. I think we can see this in many of the crash retrieval reports. And I talked to you about this, where people have, last time we were on, where people had fought physically with them. One lady snapped its neck, and down it went. People have hit and struck at these things, bit them. Yes, they absolutely can suffer injury and bleed. They have the same basic anatomical structure that we do, all with minor differences, but are, essentially human or humanoid.
And on that note, we have Preston Dennett till the top of the hour. We will continue with audience questions when we return on the mighty Spaced Out Radio. Preston's books can be found on Amazon or his website, PrestonDennett.weebly.net. Check it on out. We'll be right back on Spaced Out Radio. All right, my man, we are clear.
Cool.
Good show so far. Great show.
Yeah, I'm having fun. I always do with you. You make it easy.
Oh, well, you make it life easy for me too, my man. You do. I wish I could get over this cold here.
Send you healing energy.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank goodness for the halls tonight.
The healing does work. I did have several contactees work on me once or twice. I mean, I should say. And I'm like, wow. Yeah, Dolly did that to me once. I was having trouble with my tendons on my ankles. I'm like, gosh, it's like arthritis.
Yeah.
And it was bad. I was having trouble walking. And then suddenly it was gone. And I'm like, Dolly, because I told her about it. And then right after I told her about it, it went away. Did you do something? She's like, actually, yeah, I did. I'm like, I thought so. Thank you. Yeah. It's a big part of the contact phenomenon. I'm telling you, they teach people how to do healing.
I could use some right now. Man, I can't believe we only got half an hour left. So fast. All right. I've got probably enough questions for Preston here. What do I have here? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. 7 questions. That might do. That might do.
I like the questions.
Yeah, sorry I'm not my peppy self tonight.
Hey, that's quite all right. You're peppy enough.
Oh. Do a lot of the cases that you are seeing, do they include a lot more other adventures, shall we speak? Like, say, for instance, you have a UFO encounter that's followed up by a Bigfoot encounter minutes later. You get a lot of those?
Not a lot. It does happen. A couple of the people in the book did have Bigfoot encounters that weren't directly associated with their UFO encounters. They don't think so. I kind of wonder about it because it's pretty unusual for people to have so much stuff going on. But I've had a few of those for sure. I mean, there was one guy, a radiologist from Canyon Country, who had a UFO land in his backyard, and this borders the LA National Forest. And the next day, he had a Bigfoot encounter.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then had a poltergeist outbreak following that. I do feel like all of that's related somehow.
It does happen quick. It really does.
Yeah. Here's my latest assessment of that UFO was coming for the Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot was a contactee, and perhaps for him as well. Kill two birds with one stone, and woke him up to his abilities, because people will have poltergeist activity following an encounter. And that's because it's the same thing with this lady who's knocking out the computers and stuff. Objects will start flying around and doors will open and close and all sorts of stuff goes on. So I think that they're activated or, it's enhanced or something along those lines.
Very cool. Very cool. Yeah, I tend to believe the exact same thing, Preston. Exact same thing.
Yeah, which makes
Aaron Wilson, how you doing? And right. Big thank you tonight to Pam, H.W. Decker ×2, Louie with a hat trick, Science Bob, Jenny, Lord William, Derek, and Debster for the great super chats. Remember, a great way to support what we do is joining the Space Travelers Club on Patreon. So make sure you go check that out. The link is below in the show title. So make sure you click on that. We want to see you there. And here we go. We pass the halfway point of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Good to have you with us. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears. Want to remind you that if you missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Preston Dennett is here talking about his brand new book that can be found on Amazon or on his personal website, Humanoids and High Strangeness, 22 True UFO Encounters. Preston, thank you so much for being here. We have you till the top of the hour. Good to have you here.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Now, I had something weird just happen. I don't know if you caught it on the video, because I am sick. So right before the show, I rubbed a bunch of Vicks Vapor Rub on my chest and my throat in order to, so that way I don't lose my voice. And right when I was reading that intro, I had a glob of Vicks Vapor Rub fall between my microphone and it landed on my leg. I have no idea. That's why you see me looking down. If you're watching me on camera, I'm looking down and, trying to figure out where this glob of Vicks Vapor Rub came along. It literally just dropped out of nowhere. I'm a little weirded out by this right now. Yeah, it's Vicks. So weird. So weird. I honestly, I'm tripping out about this right now. Dolly, did Dolly have anything to do with this?
A little.
I don't know. It could be. These things happen. Happens around contactees.
I'm a little confused and a little weirded out by this right now. Because it literally just fell. And I'm feeling my beard and there are no, sliminess of Vicks Vapor Rub. I know it wasn't on my nose. It literally fell.
Yeah, I had that happen once. Not with Vicks Vapor Rub, but with a pen. I was looking for a pen. My friend Roger was there. I'm like, where's the pen? Where's the darn pen? I just had the pen. Bam! It falls right onto the table. I'm like, I don't know where that came up from. He looked at me like I threw it at him. I'm like, no, I did not.
Drives me nuts. This is going to bug me now.
I started
Totally.
the minute you talked about it.
What did Dolly say?
She said she's working on you.
I was.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's trying to make you feel better. So she's flinging around Vicks Vapor Rub.
Dude, honestly, it was so weird because literally I felt it go boom right onto my leg, and I actually saw something drop, and I'm like, what the hell is that? I looked down on my leg, looked like I shot out a booger from my nose, and I'm like, oh, that's gonna look good on camera. And then I touch it and it's like Vicks. I don't get it. But appreciate it, Dolly. I appreciate it. How about that? I do. All right, let's continue with some audience questions for you here, Preston, and let's go straight to let's go to Kelly because she has a pair of them. Preston, what's your thoughts on ET having anything to do with our creation?
It's a good question because there's certainly a lot of talk about that. And I'm going to say no, they did not create us. I don't think we have any good evidence of that. But I will say that they've been monitoring us for a very long time and upholding our genetics and following certain genetic lines. And I think maybe I could use the term upgrading to a certain extent or intervening, but I don't think there's any good evidence that they actually created us. And let's face it, we've had human-looking ETs, reports of them for a very long time. So that raises serious questions about human origins. And did we even evolve on this planet? And if you talk to people like Dolly and other contactees, no, we probably didn't. So I think the human race is probably far, far older than is conventionally believed within anthropological circles. But no, I don't think they were an experiment or ETs created us or anything like that. I don't think the evidence speaks to that, but definitely there is intervention to a certain degree.
All right, let's continue on here. Her second follow-up question. Oh, it's the same question, so we're not going to have a follow-up. Let's go to Anna. Anyone ever describe a white dish rag thing protecting as a child?
I can't say, Anna, that I have heard of that. However, people will describe all kinds of weird apparitions. One lady described this weird kind of greenish, blobby-looking apparition, which I kind of just put on the back burner. I'm like, okay. She said this seemed related to her encounters. And then later I got another guy who described pretty much the same thing. Not so much a dish rag, but amorphous, not having any real shape to it. People describe, foggy, misty forms and all manner of apparitions and stuff. But can't say that I've heard the white dish rag before. I would need more information to really get a better handle on that.
Let's go to Todd. Would like to know how many cases you have where the Greys have these silver wands or rods with a light on the end that can paralyze a person. Had it happen to me, made a scar.
Yeah, a good number of them. I wouldn't say that all of the people who've seen these ETs, yeah, they carry these little wands. And sometimes these are used to implant a person. Sometimes they'll touch you on the head and thoughts will be coming forth from them, or it'll render you paralyzed or knock you out. So there seems to be a number of different uses for them. I mean, my sister-in-law described them holding these little kind of white, almost fiber optic looking things, which they would stick in the bottoms of her feet. And she asked, "What are you doing?" And they said, "Well, we're taking your memories. We're recording your memories." So these are little tools that they use, which I think might have various functions. One guy in the book saw little blue beings. They would always carry these little wands as they came into his room, but he was always black out by the time they came up to him. So I couldn't say in his case what they were for, but yeah, I have heard that kind of thing. Absolutely.
Okay, let's move on to another question. Actually, before we do, I want to ask you about these rods. What do you think the purpose of those rods are?
Well, I think they can render a person paralyzed so that the person doesn't lash out. I think probably some cases they're healing tools. Sometimes it's used for communication. Honestly, don't know. I mean, I can only speculate a lot of the time because people will react in a certain way. This could be due to a number of different factors, because ETs, I do believe, can render you unable to move without using any instruments whatsoever. So that might be a complete red herring there. I could not say for sure, honestly, but we do see these on board craft. Well, here's a case of one lady who had Greys come around her bed, and she says they didn't paralyze her. She said she wasn't scared at all. She recognized them from TV. This was mid-1990s. And she says that they said, "We're using this to measure you." They didn't say what, but Betty Andreasen had described something similar, and they said, we're measuring your level of light in your body. So I don't know exactly what that means, but this is why research in this field is so important, because there are still a lot of questions surrounding these kinds of things. I'd like to get my hands on one of those wands so I could just test it out and see. Maybe, well, yeah, actually, in some cases, they'll use it to levitate a person. Now that you mention it, I have heard that.
It almost reminds me, that they have all these amazing powers. It's kind of like you get all of these people who say, I was taken outside through my wall into this, what looked like a 4 or 5 foot in diameter orb. And when they go inside the orb, it opens up to like a football sized stadium of a ship inside. It's just absolutely weird how they can manipulate size and space.
Yeah, like a TARDIS in Doctor Who. Yeah, I got early cases of that. And that's one of the little clues I look for when someone's describing an encounter that helps lend a little bit of authenticity or credibility to it. Because you should see their face when they try to describe this. I ask them, how big is the room? And they're like, well, it changed size. You're going to think I'm crazy, but this darn room kept changing size. That's a Navy medic told me that. He just gave me this look. Like, he's not going to believe me, but I'm going to tell him the truth. I think that does happen. And like you said, it shows how truly advanced these guys are.
Very much so. Okay, let's get to another question here. This one coming from Peppa. Preston, what do you think about CE5?
It works. Absolutely. I got involved with CSETI, Stephen Greer's group, when he was forming it. We had an LA group in 1992, I think it was. And we called down UFOs for years, for about 5 years, mostly anomalous lights. On a few occasions, they were blinking back at us and we'd blink lights at them, and it was awesome. And I know of many cases where it's worked. So yeah, I think this is absolutely a valid tool. I'm a little bit worried about people doing it now because we've got so much government craft out there, and our government has psychotronic technology to a degree where I'm afraid people could be victimized. And the reason I say that is because Dolly says over and over, she underlines it, that they're really not here now. That most of what people are seeing is our own. And another guy in the book who had encounters, he lives in Europe, basically said, you need to put this in my chapter, that people have to be careful when they're doing CE5s because they could end up being abused in my lab. And they're thinking they're calling down ETs, and they're not. And then they'll have a negative experience. So I'm like, okay, that's good to know. It's something people should be aware of. But yeah, CE5s do work 100%, and you can make contact, but you have to use your intuition. If this turns out to be something that's super scary or negative, you might want to back off a little bit, but you can still do it telepathically and mentally and reach out to ETs even now.
Yes, you can, and you don't have to pay $2,000 to $3,500 a person to do that for a weekend.
No,
Yeah.
You can
sure don't.
You can do it, and you know what? I was asked, by somebody I know how to do it because I've done it before. And the best thing that I could say is for CE5, number one, you have to have a clear conscience. You have to meditate, have a clear conscience, and be really full of peace, love, and light. As weird as that sounds, and then you concentrate on just a place in the sky. Let wherever your eyes feel comfortable, do it. And then just ask them to come. Say it out loud. Say it in your head. That out of peace, love, and light, you want them to come down.
Yeah,
And
it's worked for me.
The more energy that you put into that, the better it's going to be. More energy, whether it's yourself or a combination of people who are around you who are like-minded. And you can make it happen.
You don't need little lasers. You don't need flashlights. It's really all mental.
No, you're absolutely right. Let's go to another question here. Let's go to Matt Geek. Do grays have souls, or are they designed to be like workers or machines?
As near as I can tell, the little AI grays don't. They're not born, they don't die, they don't have souls, they're not embodied by a spiritual entity. But all the rest, yes, absolutely. And I can tell you hands down, many people I've talked to have had very benevolent, loving experiences with grays. And yes, they do have souls. They can astral project like we can. I saw a gray out of body once, and he was not physical. He was out there flitting around like I was. So yeah, I'm going to say a big yes. All the ETs are just like us in most respects. More advanced, perhaps. But yeah, do have souls, yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell the difference, or how do we tell the difference between a biological entity like the grays that say have a soul and those that seem to be almost biological robots?
Well, I'm not so sure that I can tell you that with a whole lot of authority or accuracy, but I will say that these little AI grays do sometimes move in lockstep and don't express the same kind of emotion that we see from a living being. Now that's a good question. They're generally much, the little AI grays pretty much always are these tiny little things that are workers, and they're doing all the busy work, and they're not communicating with you emotionally. Whereas most people who are contactees do have a main liaison, who is usually a mid-size or taller gray, who is nurturing and will give messages and talks to them and interacts. Whereas these little guys don't always do that. So I think that would be the main way is using your own mental abilities and communicating with them.
Let's go to Demon.
That's a good question.
Preston, what is your take on orbs and giant triangle ships?
Giant triangle ships, I suspect a good majority of those are, if not all, are reverse engineered human craft, because there's a lot of buzz about them. And I looked back through my own files, and I got really very few of people who are taken on board and seeing ETs involving triangle ships. Boomerang, yes. Manta ray, discs, egg-shaped, all different kinds, but not so much triangles. Orbs, yes, I think those, I've had experiences with these personally, I think are perhaps little scouts or probes that come down, and in some cases are actual beings, because these will appear in a person's room and elongate and widen out, and it's an actual entity. And you want to be careful here, because some of these are probably spiritual in terms of a ghost, and some might be an actual technology or a psychic projection, because remote viewing and astral travel, people are sometimes perceived as orbs. This happens to Dolly, and I've certainly heard about this in other cases. So the orb phenomena is pretty interesting. It definitely needs more research, but from what I can tell, the hard-edged orbs are technology probes, whereas the soft ones, soft-edged and kind of translucent, are spiritual or an entity of some kind.
All right, let's continue on. Let us go over to David. Are you familiar with the alien attack that occurred in Peru recently? What do you think? Valid story or not?
I am skeptical. I'm following it as closely as I can. I haven't investigated. I haven't talked to the witnesses. I haven't heard a firsthand interview from the actual witnesses. But from all the information I could gather, these things disappear as soon as you shoot at them. I'm wondering if they're holograms. Reportedly, someone was injured, but I haven't seen any pictures of it or any testimony. There's, I don't have enough information to make any judgment, but I am worried that this is a false flag exercise where they're basically putting forth the ET threat agenda. And I don't know. I don't want to say that this is a fake attack because I don't know. I can't really speak to this. I don't have the information. I need to make a real judgment on it. But I'm skeptical until I hear more.
Yeah, I don't know what to think either. To be absolutely blunt, I really don't know what to think. I mean, to me, the way it's being played out is like right out of the movie of Signs by M. Night.
Yeah, it had weird. I remember one of the descriptions was metallic armor or something, and it just didn't match up with the main types of ETs we hear. But again, until I hear a first-hand person actually talking, even if it's translated, that would definitely help. But it appears to be an isolated event, so we'll see. I'm afraid it's a false flag operation. I'm really worried about that.
Well, I do not believe one of the government experts down there stating that it was illegal gold miners with jetpacks on their arms.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. Can you imagine picking up some gold and then trying to jetpack out of there? No.
We got 3 minutes. Sovereign wants to know, which alien races stink?
I did a whole study of odors and odors on board UFOs. And yeah, people will describe going on board a craft and it smells like cheese or a funky locker room. And it does happen. So the grays can sometimes have a very powerful odor. But I'm not sure I would describe it as toe jam. But yeah, I mean, they're absolutely, I think this speaks to them being biological.
And final question for you tonight from Gloria. Have you had any personal negative experiences with ETs?
No, not one. I've loved all of them. There's been a good 20 of them. Most are just sightings. Some are interactive. But yeah, I have not had a single negative experience. That's just me. And I don't really get a whole lot of negative experiences from other people. Yes, it can be really scary for people, and that can be perceived as absolutely negative. But I don't have cases of them hurting or intentionally scaring or torturing people at all. The scariest I hear is people being physically examined, and sometimes it is harrowing. Like one lady describes a needle coming down towards her eye. She did not like that at all. I've heard that at least 3 times from people. So that's not pleasant. No, that's not fun at all. That could be perceived as absolutely negative. And one guy in England had an encounter where he woke up in one of those vats of liquid that is breathable. I call it the breathing pool. This is a pretty rare procedure, but it does occur. And he was not happy. His wife was in there and she was panicking. So these people do have negative experiences, but it hasn't been mine.
Tell everybody where they can find your books.
You can find them on my website, of course. Just punch my name in. It should take you there. Also on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, online retailers, at bookstores. And I'm all over social media as well. I've got a YouTube channel. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. So pretty easy to find if you have a question or a comment or a story to share. Love hearing from you guys. So yeah, thanks, Dave.
Oh, anytime. And you know what? We love it when you are on this show, Preston. You are one of the best people, most humble, genuine people in this field, and continue with your great work and all of your successes because you deserve them.
Oh, thanks very much.
All right,
I just want to put that in there.
Oh, you're way too kind, my man. Way too kind. PrestonDennett.weebly.net is his website. Make sure you check it on out. All his books are there and on Amazon. Coming up next, we're going to go to Among the Missing with Steve Stockton. Then little Timmy Senor, our resident Timbit, is back for the UFO Report. A giant third hour coming up next on Spaced Out Radio. We are clear, my man. Thank you so much for doing this.
Hey, my pleasure. Always a pleasure, Dave.
And for our audience, Preston will be back tomorrow night as well with the double shot. Yeah, we got a double shot of Preston. Marquise and Nicole are going to have him on after hours starting at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you tune that on in. I will be listening in as well. Preston, thank you, buddy. And give Dolly a big hug from us.
I sure will. Thanks, Dave.
All right. Take care, bud.
Bye.
Preston Dennett, everybody. I will be right back. And yeah, see you in a minute. How you guys doing? Corey Cole, what happened? What's happening? Pardon me. Oh, don't get sick in summer. It sucks. To Mothman, how's your goatee? Did it survive Vanessa? We need to know. No more stray Vicks. That was weird. All right. Thank you, Pam H. W. Decker ×2, Louis ×3, Lord William, Derek, Debster, Science Bob, and Jenny for the super chats tonight. Very much appreciated. Our Space Travelers Club is open. Go to patreon.com/SOR/space/travelers/club. There, I put the link in the chat room. Don't forget, you got your swag that you could get at our store, spacedoutradio.com. Hey, Blake McCreary, how you doing? And yeah, here we go, everybody.
Would you like to connect with us? Head to spacedoutradio.com for all your latest show info. Now, back to Dave Scott and SOR.
Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Very much appreciate earning your listening ears wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on Odyssey Radio, TalkStream Live at KPNL. All of our archives are free. Join us at youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio. Do old Davey the favor. Hit that subscribe button. The Desert Clam is set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Vasharin. Vasharin is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on TikTok at Spaced Out Radio. Here we go. It is that time of the night to kick off hour 3 as Steve Stockton brings in another spooky story.
Hello, friends. Welcome to Among the Missing YouTube channel on Spaced Out Radio. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'm about to take you on an unbelievable journey of people just like you. Their stories and encounters will haunt us on Among the Missing. Hello, friends. Steve Stockton here with you. Welcome to our latest video. In this episode, I'm going to bring you the strange case of a missing preschooler who was found alive after 2 days alone in the woods. Let's walk and see. 3-year-old Riker Webb wandered away from the family home while playing with his dog on Friday, June 3rd, 2022, south of Troy, Montana. Authorities were contacted by neighbors after hearing the parents of the boy shouting his name for over 2 hours. When police arrived on the scene, the parents explained that they had been searching for young Riker for 2 hours to no avail. Search and rescue teams, along with K-9 units, helicopters, drones, ground, aerial, and medics, all responded to the area, although a helicopter was forced to return to base because of worsening weather conditions. The following day, the search resumed as weather had cooperated, and the helicopter as well as the drone were able to assist in the search effort. Neighbors were asked to check their homes, outbuildings, and any other structures on their property. Weather worsened, though, as the day went on, creating a low visibility for the drone and the helicopter. Ground crews were forced to do much of the search because of the low-hanging cloud cover and persistent rainy conditions. This area is very densely packed with vegetation and a lot of overgrowth, forcing ground crews to slow their pace. A total of 53 search and rescue crew members joined the search on the third day, as there had been no progress made. They covered the mountain area, miles into the wilderness, in an attempt to locate the child before the weather conditions worsened again. Just as it was felt all hope was lost, though, A call over the communications system reported a child found near Pine Ridge Road, close to South Fork Bull River. Against all odds, 3-year-old Riker Webb was found alive on day 3 of the search. The team responsible for finding the youngster reported that he was fine, other than possibly looking a little worse for the wear and being hungry, thirsty, and cold. It seems as the child told investigators that he simply, quote, went for a walk with his dog and got tired, end quote. The resourceful little fellow found a shed and took shelter from the weather. The family checking on their cabin found the child earlier that day and alerted authorities. The shed was roughly 2 miles from Riker's home. The shed housed a generator for a hunting cabin. The family that owns the cabin were there checking on their retreat, and it seems as they didn't know a child was missing in the area. Imagine their surprise when they heard a small child's voice coming from the shed. They went to investigate and found Webb hiding. He was visibly shaken, stated Lincoln County Sheriff Darren Short. He was very, very scared. Bears, mountain lions, and other wildlife inhabit the area and are active this time of year. The weather was also an issue. The entire time, rescue crews were searching for the boy as several thunderstorms rolled through the area. Temperatures got into the low 40s, and the area where Webb sought shelter was an old drafty shed. They think he may have slept in or on a lawnmower bag for warmth and had possibly been at the cabin since Friday when he was first reported missing. Riker Webb was taken to Cabinet Peaks Medical Center for evaluation, but has since been released to his parents. The case remains open, however, due to investigators needing to question the parents on several issues from the time Riker went missing. Police intend to ask the parents why 2 hours had passed before Riker was reported missing, and also why the parents hadn't called before then, and why the child wasn't being watched more closely. Search teams were apparently able to follow clues little Riker left along the path he took on his way up the mountain. Sheriff Short stated the crews were able to make those areas and used ATVs to reach areas where it was impossible to get other equipment. Riker is said to like bugs, and searchers noticed several rocks overturned on the path they were following. It looked as though someone was looking for bugs, Short stated. Riker was found wearing a blue onesie with holes in the toes and feet. Riker Webb was happy to be reunited with his parents. Now, just as a side note here, when Riker was reported missing, the description the parents gave us to his clothing was incorrect, as reported by news outlets. Also, according to Lincoln County Sheriff Darren Short, media reporting on the case wrongly stated initially Riker Webb's age as 4 years old, but corrected the age to 3 in a following statement later the first day he was missing. So what do you think of this strange case? There's been a lot of unusual comments on social media. I look forward to what you all have to say. But please keep it friendly and respectful. Till we meet again, be good to yourselves and each other. As for me, I'll see you a little further on down the trail. I'm Steve Stockton, and I'll talk to you next time. Tell your animals Steve says hi.
And thank you, Steve, for another great report on Among the Missing. If you want more just like that, head on over to his YouTube channel, youtube.com/Among the Missing, and you can listen to as many as you like, all for free. All for free. The only thing we ask, once again, hit that subscribe button. From the missing to the mysterious, it is that time of the night once again where we bring in little Timmy Senor, our resident Timbit, for the UFO report.
Nobody's gonna know.
They're gonna know.
What is happening, my man? What is happening? How you been?
Been good. Been doing really well. Thanks for asking. How about yourself? Are you staying cozy? Not too cozy. I know BC's on fire.
Yeah, it's pretty scary right now. Now, around our area, there are no fires. So I'm pretty happy about that. Kelowna, just 4 hours south of me and an hour north of where my daughter lives. We're thinking in Penticton, and we're thinking of getting her out of there, even though they're pretty safe there. She lives in the town. But it's scary. My sister is evacuated from her home in West Kelowna, a resort that is right by her house has turned to ashes now. It is brutal, and the fires are jumping the lakes, and they are sparking up all over the place. There's lightning that is hitting. A lot of these fires, though, look, before the conspiracy theorists go nuts, a lot of these fires are accidentally human made. And, it's not just the smokers out there, so don't blame the smokers. Okay. It's everybody from people having, a little campfire because they want to fry up some bacon, or they're on a picnic, or they are using a motorbike that could cause a spark, or an ATV that hits a rock and maybe causes a spark that sends things going. I mean, it's that's the way it is. Mother Nature's doing her job, of lightning strikes. Look, there's always been fires. There always has. The reason why more people are being evacuated now is because we've grown out of the cities. And when you grow out, where do you go? You start cutting down into wilderness. And that's what's happening. So it's a big push, and Mother Nature for years, decades, millennia has been cleansing herself this way. And so that's just the way it is. Unfortunately, some of these fires, they allow them to get way too big now. Into these super fires. And I don't really understand why. You see smoke, get it out. Plain and simple. Don't wait for the grounds crew. Get those planes in the air and start, bombing them. Here's the one thing that's different from the United States to Canada. In Canada, I believe that the pilots are not allowed to fight fires at night. Whereas in the US, the planes could go as long as they could stay in the sky. So that's a little bit different, So hopefully we get some rain here soon. We've been getting really bad wind, even in my area, which is believed to be a lot of the cause from the forest fires, as well as the hurricane that's coming up from Mexico that's going to go through California, Nevada, maybe into Oregon and Washington State. So hopefully that changes. Okay. So yeah, it's the way it is right now, man.
Yeah, fires have been devastating this year all over, as we know. And, I'll roll it over into our top story because there's fire in Congress too, in the UFO topic. We know that it's a bipartisan issue that you and I talk about all the time. And now a bipartisan group is pushing for a select committee and to have classified hearings on UFOs. And so the recent article coming from The Hill is also in support of a recent show that they did, an event, if you will, that they had an hour-and-a-half event on Thursday that was called The Truth Is Out There, UFOs and National Security. So The Hill is now getting on board with covering this topic in depth, and they had Jared Moskowitz, Tim Burchett, and then via the Hill actually interviewed Ryan Graves via News Nation interviewee, correspondent, interestingly, and then Anna Paulina Luna. So it was a great hour and a half getting in deep into discussions, asking some of the questions that we've all been wondering about, whether or not there's going to be a special committee being held in SCIF locations to discuss some of the things that David Grush was discussing publicly. And is there going to be another discussion about the results, not necessarily in detail, but what their action is going to be as a result of those SCIF information insider discussions? And so Congress is on their heels now, and so they're going to have to come back with some serious response. And so this is moving. Dave, I know you're pretty much on this topic too. How do you feel about this new push coming forward?
I think they are planning different parts of attacks. Okay. to attack this subject from those at the Pentagon and those in the military who do not want this story to come out. They want to shut it down. And the only way they can do that is by continuing the pressure and finding other ways to soldier on and work around the situation. And I think that's what we're seeing here. You know, at some point, though, we need to have people speaking for ufology. Okay, not the Ryan Graves of the world. Okay, remember, he didn't see anything. He's just an activist now. He saw on radar something that looked like a cube or an orb with a cube in it, but he never saw it with his own eyes. When are we going to get different people? We have the thing that baffles me about this whole thing, Tim, is we have people from scientists to ordinary citizens who have been studying this topic for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Why aren't they asked to be a part of this? You know, love them or hate them. Where's Richard Dolan in this? Why hasn't he been asked? Where's Grant Cameron's invitation? Okay. Where's Melinda Leslie's? Well, I can understand why they wouldn't want Melinda. They'd still be talking, and it'd be 3 weeks in and she's still on the same first sentence. Okay. You have brilliant people, whether it's Gary Nolan, Science Bob, okay, Dr. Michael Masters, many of the members of the SCU, brilliant people. Ben Hansen would be a good one, even though he's tied to Enigma Labs. Where are the people who've been doing the boots on the ground work? And instead we get Ryan Graves just because he's a fighter pilot? Now, I'm not putting down Ryan Graves. I'm really not. Okay? But he has special interest in this. Let's remember, he has set up a couple of groups, one business and one activist group for former fighter pilots and current fighter pilots and aviation pilots to report their sightings to them. So that way they can have all of this discussion in pilot talk. But he also has a company that is trying to form some sort of defense contract to pick up UFOs on radar and other ways. He's a special interest group. Where's his bias leaning? Yet we have all of these researchers, Tim, that are untapped sources that people like Burchett and Luna should be going to. What about Peter Robbins? Guy's brilliant. Okay? Bob Spearing from MUFON, another brilliant guy. Okay? There are a ton of them out there. And we're not using them. If Stanton Friedman was alive, wouldn't it be insultive if Stanton wasn't there?
That's a good point. You make a great point. I totally agree with you. And I think the fact is that we do have activists and politicians covering this, and we do need a new breed. And I think that it needs to be somebody that doesn't have any chips in the game whatsoever. I mean, people like perhaps David Marlar, who is heading up a massive UFO research library, where he just has access to a ton of data that he could make available to anyone that wants it. And he's digitizing it now, so he could make it readily available. All you would need to do is look it up, probably by date or any, word. He's making it very searchable. So the other thing, I feel that it's unfortunate Lou Elizondo has gone so silent. Perhaps he's still working actively behind the scenes, but I feel this would be a great time for him to come forward and perhaps support some of the claims that have been made and maybe come out with some verifiable information. As we know, He's well liked in the community and speaks well on the topic and is knowledgeable. So between him and Chris Mellon, those would be two perfect candidates to also come forward, I think, at this point, to give credible testimony. And I feel like another aspect of this that has fallen to the wayside is the fact that the Wilson Davis documents were accepted into history with Congress, and there was no follow-up. We haven't seen anything necessarily publicly, at least, from Eric Davis or Admiral Wilson. So whether that's taken place and there's lawyers involved, or it's taken place silently, or it hasn't, we don't know. And that silence, I feel, also kind of screams a red flag that there's something to it, if you will. What do you think?
Excuse me. I apologize.
Well done.
I agree that there needs to be more, that we have to push things a little bit further. I'm not saying that we don't. The more we push, the more these agencies are going to get frustrated. Okay, we can already tell there's frustrations there. Now, some will say, well, they don't really care about what's going on. You guys are a bunch of peons compared to the bigger picture. But you know what? All it takes is a few ants to build an ant colony. And that's what we're doing. More and more people are waking up to this story because of the way it's been publicized over especially the last year and a half. More Washington, D.C. senators and Congress people need to get involved. Okay. But I agree with you. We need new faces. New faces never hurt. But if you're relying on the same people to give the same testimony each and every time, how does that move the ball forward? You have people who literally have rooms in their house dedicated to boxes of research that they are willing to turn over. I know Grant Cameron has turned over a lot of research to members of parliament in Canada for them to read up on. Hundreds, if not thousands of pages. Why? Because they reached out to him. Because he is one of Canada's top researchers in this field. Same as Chris Rutkowski, another good friend of this show. Where's that happening, or why is that not happening in the United States? You don't think Richard Dolan, love him or hate him, wouldn't add anything to this picture? Right? And that's what I don't get, okay? Because Ryan Graves is not an experiencer. He's an advocate. Most of the pilots who've seen something, okay, they've already reported it. They've already told us what they know, like Commander David Fravor or Alex Dietrich. Are they heroes? Sure they are. Absolutely. Don't take anything away from them that way. But what do they know about UFOs? What do they know over somebody who has, like David Marler, who has studied these black triangles, the number one resource in black triangles in the world, not just in America, in the world? Couldn't he teach a thing or two? And that was a great one to add, by the way. Right?
Yeah.
I don't
Well, I
get
think,
it, Tim.
yeah. And when we come back, we'll talk more about it. But I'll tell you what, I think it's because they would have to ask those hard questions. They'd get the answers, and then they would know. Because those people that we listed know the facts, know the truth, know where it happened and when. And so if anyone was to ask, they'd know the truth.
But it's not just about the woo. And we'll continue that conversation when we return with little Timmy Senor and the UFO report here in hour number 3 of Spaced Out Radio. The final half hour is coming up right after this, so stay tuned. We do appreciate your listening ears. Man, I'm having troubles getting words out tonight.
You're doing great. You kidding me? Preston is such a gem too.
Oh, both him and Dolly are just two of the most beautiful people in this field.
Yeah. How can you not just love them?
But you know what? I don't think government officials are ready for somebody like a Preston Dennett. Okay.
Well, my point was that if they did resource these people that are deeply in the know on research with the data, that have probably the actual paperwork, if they were to ask them, if Kirkpatrick was to ask them, well, then he would know. And then he would have to respond publicly that he does know about it. Right. And at this point, they don't want that as the result. So they're really working with blinders on. They're only dealing with things that come across their desk at that office. They're not actively looking for anything. And they said that publicly, the same way NASA seems to be doing the same thing with their quote unquote UAP research team. So I think it's, it's very disappointing to see that the representatives on this aren't actively looking for the truth. Otherwise they would be looking to history and looking for available data from the list that we've just come up with between the two of us. That's a great way to start. But the internet, I mean, they could probably find a lot of great stuff that's, true historically on the internet, and they don't even seem to want to do that. So yeah, paddling upstream, I think, on this one.
Oh, we have been paddling upstream forever.
Yeah.
We really have. It's just I just don't get it, man.
Yeah, that's why,
Like, if I'm Tim Burchett and I am looking into everything that kind of goes along with this subject, why am I not looking into the voices of history?
well, I think he might be. In a recent interview that he just did, he said that he's been into this since he was a kid and he read everything that he could get his hands on. So he knows quite a bit, I'll bet, historically. I mean, he definitely knows the basics. Whereas if you were to say who's Betty and Barney Hill to a lot of people, they wouldn't know. Even with all the documentation, they still wouldn't know who that was. So, yeah, I mean, there's an element of personal interest. I know that Jared Moskowitz also has personal interest. And of course, we know that Representative Luna had an experience while she was in the military where a pilot disclosed a UAP experience that he had to her. So she's definitely someone that comes with the background, and these are the people that are moving on it politically. And like you said, disclosure coming from the government is going to look, I mean, we don't know what it's going to look like, but they're fighting for their version of it right now. I have a question for you though. What are the powers working against it? Who do you think is working against this disclosure? Because we know that there's money to be spent on the science aspect of UAP research, right? Not UFO, but UAP. So there's money in the research there, but who's working against UFO disclosure, in your opinion? And let's say the powers against Grush and his truth.
Oh, I think that's the entire intelligence and military community.
Why? Why are they trying to hush that up?
Because they want the technology for themselves. They want the bodies for themselves. They want it all for themselves. They're greedy.
And they don't want to explain the years and years and years of cover up and spending and history that they have.
All it takes, Tim, all it takes is for them to have one name of a civilian like Tim Senor, and they know about your abduction or your encounter of missing time.
I've had none of that, by the way.
I know you haven't. I'm just using your name as an example.
Okay.
Okay. That's all. I mean, imagine the lawsuits.
Right.
Let's quickly say hello to Dewey Cheatham and Howe. And who else has joined us here? Cowboys 5 Rings. Stalled at 5 rings, by the way. You still need a quarterback. Let's see here. Who else has joined us?
Electric
Jenny Girl, how are you?
Jenny Girl out there too. That's great.
Tokeland, Philip Baca, and a reminder to all of you that our Space Travelers Club is open on Patreon. The link is in the chat. Here we go. Here we go, the final half hour, talking the UFO report with Tim Senor. My name is Dave Scott. Always a pleasure to be behind the microphone bringing you this highly toxic woo that we have around here. Reminder to all of you that if you've missed portions of this show or others, check out our free archives by going to youtube.com/spaced out radio. Do old Davey the favor, hit that subscribe button. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and join the Space Travelers Club on Patreon. Here we go. Tim Senor is back with the UFO report. And right before the break, we were talking about, what do we have to do to get more voices into disclosure? And Tim, thank you so much for joining us. I know you want to spend a little bit more time on this before we move on.
Yeah. And I mean, I do think that it is time that new voices come forward, but it needs to be something that has a little more validity that perhaps the community can point to. So let's say they reference somebody with a vast majority of evidence in their library, such as evidence and researcher and restorer of evidence and digitizer of evidence, David Marlar, who currently has the largest library of UFO documentation and history collected in one location. And I mean, that would be a great resource. And at this point, we do need more voices on the topic that they can see that's credible, that has something to bring to the table, that may not necessarily be a whistleblower or a witness. Maybe we could bring someone from the science community. You'd mentioned people from SCU. They present papers constantly on the topic, proving both mundane and anomalous events. So I think to have somebody that's playing right down the middle, that isn't necessarily got too many chips in the game, really is necessary for Congress to make any kind of valid decisions at this point moving forward. And they need to tap it.
Well, they also need to get fresh voices, fresh information. Okay. You don't have to, use the names that we dropped in the last half hour. There's a lot of names out there, probably more names that we've never heard of. But that being said, we do need more voices. All right, let's move on to part number 2 here, where apparently there's a new whistleblower going viral about alien technology in Antarctica. What's this all about?
Perfect timing during our discussion, as we were just saying we need new voices. This Eric Hecker has whistleblower testimony that he's been sharing concerning the secrets of Antarctica, and it's recently gone viral. In fact, he has done some interviews on a few podcasts and TV shows, and he's done a few live audio platform interviews, including Sean Ryan's channel. And you can kind of go there and see it, but it's gone viral because of the incredible information that he has concerning his time while he was a contractor for Raytheon and allegedly at a research base in Antarctica. And he is the latest person to come forward claiming direct knowledge of aliens, UFOs, and advanced weapon systems. So there are a few interviews out there, but the one that comes to mind is some kind of technology that can not only penetrate the earth, but They're calling like a bio op because there was massive secret operations going on that only a few people were even in the know on. And so, Dave, there's a lot of mystery in Antarctica, and I'm sure you've heard some of the stories, but this whistleblower in particular, I can get into some of the details here with you, but I know you're a little bit familiar with new whistleblowers coming forward like this and coming from contractors working for companies like Raytheon. Is this the kind of voice that we need? And what does it take for people to take this as a credible witness?
Well, you know what? We've seen Eric Hecker on the scene for a few months now, going public about being a whistleblower. And I think, if the guy is legit with his expertise, his knowledge, his security clearances for the agencies that he worked for, hey, good on him. Good on him for coming on out. We need more. We need about, 100 to 200 more. But that being said, when you get into the woo aspect of things, like aliens in Antarctica, and maybe they got a secret base under the polar ice surface, that's where it gets a little bit haywire, where a lot of the politicians start getting afraid that they are, falling for somebody who's just trying for their 15 minutes of fame. All right. Now, I'm not saying it isn't that way, but you never know. Anything is possible. So, do I encourage more whistleblowers to come out? 100%, absolutely. They need to come out. They really need to come out and tell the public exactly what they know.
I have a question for you, Dave, because I know as a reporter, you like to kind of go down the middle on things. And so I'm going to ask you a kind of down the middle question on this. Um, Given that there are going to be so many whistleblowers and witnesses coming forward with claims, at what point do we see this as just a distraction for government spending? And, people that are anyone that's willing to come out with a story like this is kind of in support of potentially that kind of spending, opposed to the credible witnesses that are coming forward with maybe something that is a little bit more mundane, but still goes in the UAP category, as we've discussed, a light in the sky, or perhaps something that, did come from China, but it falls into the same realm as alien technology in Antarctica. Do you see what my question is?
Yes, I do. And I'm trying to formulate a proper answer for you. Um I think if the person has a good resume and they are brave enough to come out, eventually one of these people is going to have to bring some evidence with them. Now, that evidence may not ever see the public eye, like what David Grush had brought forward and put into evidence. But we need something. The public needs something. The news outlets need something. Whether it's a photo, not of an orb that's 15 miles away, not of a shot of a blurry set of lights in the sky that looks like a bokeh triangle. There's got to be a leak of something. The government, and you remember Random Guy telling us this. The government is not good at keeping secrets. So how have they been able to keep the lid on the UFO story? And the theory behind that is it's because there is no UFO story. Do you remember that conversation with him? Okay. So the fact that we have these whistleblowers that are willing to talk, that means there's probably what, 10, 15,000 other potential eyewitnesses from the 60s on up who we could have used but haven't. So eventually, they got to give us something. They're not going to give us a crash retrieval. They're not going to give us the alien bodies, so we can scratch those two off the list right now. But the question is, what do we do with what we have left? Right now, I would take a good video before AI really becomes a part of mainstream society, which is where it's heading. I would take a good video. One that's going to, and not just, what we saw in Go Fast Gimbal or Tic Tac, but I want to see a video of something majorly weird or strange that was caught. Maybe a UFO landing. Maybe a UFO takeoff. What about you, Tim? Make sure your mic's on.
Yeah, I love that. And how do you think Congress is going to handle that, knowing that they have potentially to look into what David Grush's claims were with alien bodies and crafts, and then Eric Hecker's claims from being a contractor at Raytheon saying things like, big science words, some pretty scary words, including, weapons that can cause earthquakes and UFO air traffic control. Um, you know, it sounds a little bit out there, but at the same rate, we have to consider that in the same realm as it needs to be looked into deeper because it's being made a claim of,
Absolutely.
and at this point, it's going to be in front of Congress. And so it has to be taken seriously. Now, I kind of brought up the fact that the Wilson Davis documents have kind of fallen to the wayside. Are we going to see some of these other big claims fall to the wayside and not get looked into, do you think, Dave? Or do you think that they're going to do what they say and do some of these deeper dives in the skiffs and, do the congressional well, they'd said that they were going to actually hold specific meetings on these topics. So do you think that's going to happen on all of these massive claims?
Well, I mean, but that's what I'm saying, Tim, is all of this information is being held behind the scenes, gets put in some file that is probably in Burchett's office or somebody else's office. Okay. What about the public? Give us something. Okay. There are a lot of critics in the UFO world right now, more so than we've ever seen before. And the majority of them, whether it's Mick West, Michael Huntington, okay, and a few others, the main thing that they're asking is extraordinary claims have to lead to extraordinary evidence. What's the evidence that this is happening? We're hearing a lot of yeah buts. Yeah, it's here, but you can't see it due to NDAs. Yeah, we have it, but you can't see that video. It's not for you. You're not old enough. You're not mature enough. So, I mean, we see the same thing with the evidence that David Grush provided. Where did that go? Mr. Openness, Tim Burchett, who wants to put everything on the public table. What are we missing, Tim? And remember, I told you, he needs to be called out. He was provided written testimony that wants to be provided in a skiff. Okay. Is it of national security? We don't know. But if those papers that Grush turned in turn out to be true documents, how is the public going to know? And Mr. We need disclosure for the American public right now isn't providing it. What are you afraid of? An NDA? You're already hated by everybody. They just hate you less than the other guy. That's how you get voted in. So he's talking on both sides of his mouth. And nothing really has been released since that hearing, or the results of the hearing, or what they heard after. So what was the use of it? I don't know. Your thoughts, Tim?
No, I'm with you. I'm waiting to see some legislation or some activity from those results after them having these closed door meetings or the skiff meetings and interviews. And that's why I was wondering, what happened with the Wilson Davis documents? There was so much in there. If that was verified, there's some massive information in there. And it just kind of got pushed to the wayside. And that is very frustrating. And to know that potentially that the players like Tim Burchett, Representative Luna, and others that are in the know whether that's been verified or not, and not sharing that is part of
I
the
agree.
problem.
Final story tonight, and I love this one.
Me too.
The man behind the TV series Taken, the man behind E.T., and Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Steven Spielberg, has a new docuseries at Netflix called Alien or Encounters. Just called Encounters, I believe.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tim? Spielberg
Four-parter?
getting back to the UFO game.
I can't wait. I thought Taken was fantastic. It was enthralling and it still holds up. It's not like what you expect from a Spielberg series. It gets into depth with a lot of character development, but I think it hits some pretty historical facts in there as well, in Taken series at least. And I don't know if the names have been changed or not, but boy, there's some pretty moving moments, and I can guarantee it's at least based on some historical fact. And now Encounters coming from Netflix, launching in September on the 27th. It's going to be a 4-part series. And of course, it's going to deliver. We know because it's Spielberg. But this is created by the same people that did Generation Hustle. And in this series, they're going to explore 4 extraordinary true stories of encounters with otherworldly phenomenon. And each episode is going to tell a single story. Strange lights in the sky over a small town in Texas, for example, told from the perspective of firsthand experiencers. And so in the places where the sightings occurred and guided by scientists and military personnel, the series is going to highlight the profoundly human impact of these encounters on the lives, families, and communities. So it comes at a pretty explosive time right now. And it also comes as an explosive new revelations emerge from military whistleblowers, right? So it kind of is in sync with everything that we're seeing in the headlines as well. So perfect timing and coming from the master himself. So this is going to cover everything from lights over the skies in the small town of Texas, submersible spacecrafts haunting a coastal Welsh village, an alien encounter with school children in Zimbabwe, and non-human intelligence reportedly interfering with a nuclear power plant in Japan. So some of those might sound familiar and some might not, but it's going to be a really cool series. And it sounds like that each episode is going to be at a different location, told from firsthand perspective. Pretty excited for that. Dave, I know you are too.
Maybe we need to borrow some of his budget.
Definitely. Any portion would be so great.
Yeah. No, I'm excited about this. Steven Spielberg, nobody can ever convince me, and I will likely never, ever meet the man, okay, because he's so recluse. But I would almost guarantee you, like the late Tom Clancy, that he had so many insiders that are tipping him off that he can tell the story properly. Okay.
Yeah.
I really believe that the United States government has had close encounters like we saw in the Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie. It wouldn't surprise me if a man like Lou Elizondo was one of those Richard Dreyfuss type players. It wouldn't surprise me. except you're not gone for years. You may be gone for a couple days.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I think Spielberg has definitely had insider knowledge in his career, like throughout his career, if not. It's kind of like how The Simpsons reflects society and what's going on and kind of predicts it. A lot of what we're seeing in the art coming from Spielberg also kind of predicts what's going on and what's about to happen. But this one in particular, I think is going to be great because it's highlighting something historical that we are considering to have really happened. And the fact that he's going to be potentially reenacting it in a way that's going to be acceptable for all of us, doesn't that kind of seem like that's preparation? If anything, this is preparation. Coming from Spielberg, everyone's going to see this. This is massive preparation in my personal opinion. So that's why I was so stoked to see it and why I really wanted to cover it, because this is, in my opinion, UFO news in a massive way, because it's really headlining this topic and headlining these cases as being, the best ones that we can validate and reproduce. And that he had a plethora of options to choose from.
Oh, I agree with you. Nobody can tell that story better. And I'm pumped up for it. I can't wait to see it. I'm glad he's back doing it because, you take somebody like James Fox, who's done an incredible job bringing out a lot of these stories. But James Fox is no Steven Spielberg. And I just hope that he stays true to the stories that are there. Tim, we got to say a good night to you on the Mighty SOR. I can't believe how fast this past hour is gone, man. But
Time
so glad that
flies.
you're here.
Thanks,
So
buddy.
glad that you're here. And, I can't wait to see you back in, hopefully around the beginning of October, where we could start doing our little project again. And we continue it up here in British Columbia, which will be very fun. And Tim, we'll go get an ice cap next time we see you. Yeah, we will. Appreciate it. Thank you also to Steve Stockton and our guest tonight, Preston Dennett, for a great show on UFOs. We got Mr. Ron Bumblefoot Thal rocking in the background with Little Brother is Watching. Bumblefoot is the official music of Spaced Out Radio, rocking us in and out of every single show. Get your horns up for the guitar god himself. Special thanks to everybody listening in at home, at work, in your cars, wherever you may be. Thank you to everyone in our chat rooms tonight. YouTube, Twitch, LGAP, Facebook, Spreaker, LinkedIn, the Space Travelers Club. Head on Twitter at hashtag Spaced Out Radio. I know you're out there somewhere. Remember, this show is copyright by Spaced Out Radio and SOR Media Ventures Limited. Thank you so much for choosing to share your evening with us, because together, my friends, we're watching. We own the night. Mr. Bumblefoot, we need a favor. We need you to take us home. Yes, the Woo train has docked for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Your seats are always available. Your tickets never expire. And if you want to bring a friend, we've got room for them too. Good night. All right. That was a good show, everyone. Very good show. I am going to call it early here because my throat is really sore. And I want to go get some sleep. I'm not even going to edit this show tonight. Normally I edit right after, but I'm just not going to do that tonight. So if you could join us for After Hours, Preston Dennett will be back again tomorrow. Greatly appreciate that. And thank you to our super chatters, Pam, W. Decker ×2, Louis ×3, Deb, Derek, Jenny, Bob, and Lord William. Very much appreciate the love, everybody. Really do. And I feel like crap. I really feel like crap. But yeah. Join After Hours tomorrow. Jessica Jones will be back with her show, The Cryptid Huntress, and Off the Trails right beforehand. I'll say goodnight to you guys, but thank you for the love tonight. Very much appreciate it. And we'll see you on Monday, where my guest will be Courtney Marchesani. We are talking about the UFO hearings and the cover-up that's happening. Hopefully I'll be feeling better. Do me a favor also, everybody. I know you're fans, okay, but a great way to support what we do on this show is the Space Travelers Club. And we're going to be adding more and more to it as we go. So we've got 2 in there. We've got Mennonite Abe, and we have Lynn McKenzie. We'd love to add your name in there too. There's a bunch of packages for you. All right. I'm going to say goodnight tonight, guys. And thank you for allowing me to bail a little early, but old Davy's just not feeling well. Not feeling well at all. All right. Talk soon. Good night.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.